Good morning, and thank you for joining us. My name is Donna Miller, and I'm the CEO and co-founder of Purse Power. Purse Power is working to help women use their massive purchasing power to drive positive change. We believe that if women, who make 80% of all purchasing decisions, would choose to buy from the companies that promote women, and we would do it in mass, and we could create a funding stream for battered women's shelters in the process, that we could shatter glass ceilings and change lives. So that's what Purse Power is trying to do. We hold these sessions every Friday at 10 Central and have over 65 recordings on our website at pursepower.com/coronavirus. We've had national leaders of all kinds sharing their insight and knowledge during the pandemic. And I hope you will go there and enjoy our library of prior broadcasts. In addition to that, if you're interested in attending upcoming events, we post our Friday sessions every Monday morning, and you can go ahead and register right from our website. Again, pursepower.com. We also do a networking session the fourth Friday of every month, and this month it'll be July 22nd. So I hope you can join us. People are meeting each other, forming partnerships, finding customers, all kinds of things through those sessions. Let me begin by introducing Debra. And Debra is a Mayo Clinic and National Board Certified Health and Wellness Coach. She is also a lifestyle medicine coach, and she's been trained at the American College of Lifestyle Medicine. Debra's passion is to help people make the most of their health and well-being in ways that make the most sense for them. She loves helping clients create practical and sustainable solutions for feeling and living at their best. As a wellness coach, speaker, and writer, Debra provides keynote speeches, presentations, workshops, and ongoing wellness programs for groups, teams, companies, and organizations. She's faced significant health challenges herself and knows firsthand how important it is to prioritize self-care and well-being in good and challenging times. She lives an active lifestyle, and she loves to read and spend time with her husband and young adult children. Debra, thank you so much for joining us. This is going to be a wonderful day.
Thank you so much, everyone, for being here. I'm really excited to engage with you on the subject of health and wellness. It's my passion, working with women and supporting them in health and wellness. I'm going to take you a little bit on my journey of how I got from college to where I am now in my profession. And I want to invite you to buckle your seatbelts, because it's going to be a little bit of a wild ride. But also, as we talk together today, I want to invite you to think about what part pragmatism has played in your life journey and what part passion has played in your life journey, and how those have maybe worked at odds at times and how they've worked together. So I started in college thinking that I was going to study journalism. I was fascinated with communication, with print journalism, with broadcast journalism, all of it. That was my passion. And yet the pragmatic part of me and some encouragement from my father really caused me to look at some other possibilities. So choosing pragmatism, I went into accounting. And I actually enjoyed it. It really fulfilled that analytical side of my brain. I was able to balance the books. I was able to add things up, and it was neat and tidy in some ways, and in other ways not. So I studied accounting in college at the University of Texas. And then after that, I went into the accounting industry and worked for a very top tier accounting firm internationally in Houston. Maybe you've heard of it. It was Arthur Andersen, which later went down in infamy with the Enron scandal. That is the very office that I worked in, although I was never on the Enron client. So after Arthur Andersen, I went into industry, and pragmatism, I stayed with accounting. Passion, I moved into the nonprofit sector and eventually became a corporate controller for 4 affiliated not-for-profit healthcare companies. Loved the work that I did there and enjoyed my time there. At one point, I decided, out of passion and somewhat pragmatism, that I wanted to spend some real time with my young family. So I left the full-time work world to be with my kids and to enjoy that time, but I always kept irons in the fire professionally. I taught financial planning at the University of Texas at Austin. I did small business consulting. And then the passionate part of me began to write. I trained myself to write for newspapers, for magazines. I wrote for the Dallas Morning News. I've written for the Oklahoman. I've written for numerous newspapers and magazines out of passion for communication and a curiosity about the world. So I love that time in my life where I was full throttle motherhood, but I was also keeping those irons in the fire. But during that time, during those years of early motherhood, there came a time when I started to feel tired and weak, and something was going on and I wasn't sure what. I felt bloated. I just felt like something wasn't right. Friends would ask me how I was doing and I would say fine. But behind the scenes, I was struggling to navigate my day-to-day life, and it didn't make sense. I was young. I was enthusiastic about being a mom and doing the work that I was doing. But I began to go through some diagnostics with doctors, and pretty soon they found a mass in my lower abdominal region that should not have been there. And so they were concerned. I was concerned. They didn't think it was cancer because I didn't fit any of the risk profiles in terms of maternal history, in terms of age, in terms of how I lived my life and what I had been exposed to. But they continued to pursue diagnostics. And I just had this niggling feeling that something was wrong. And so through a series of MRIs and then ultimately surgery, we discovered that I did have ovarian cancer. Young mom of kids, I had a tumor the size of a small cantaloupe. And I think they intended to make it less serious by saying small, but when I heard the word cantaloupe with a cancerous mass, it was pretty scary for me. I was in the hospital for about a week, and during that time I was so weak from the major abdominal surgery that I could hardly turn over in bed without help and support from the staff at the hospital. My husband would bring my kids to the hospital to visit with me. We didn't know what my prognosis was initially. And each of my kids from ages 4 up to a teenager would take a turn to crawl into bed with mom. To just be a comfort to me, but also to remind themselves, mom's here, she's with us, we're in this together. During that time, a dear friend also came to visit me in the hospital. I remember her leaning over my bed and looking at me and saying, Debra, you're gonna make it. You're going to get through this. You've got work here still to do. You're going to help women replenish themselves. And I thought, okay, this is interesting. Doctors can't even tell me yet that I'm going to make it. And this idea of supporting women and replenishing themselves, that was something that at the time I struggled with some myself. And so the seeds were planted. Interestingly, a few weeks later, I went to my dentist. And he said essentially the same thing. He didn't even know my friend. He knew that I had written about subjects of interest to women and mothers. And he said, you know what, your next book, you should write a book about women replenishing themselves. So the seeds were planted for a wellness profession, but I still had some lessons to learn personally before I could step into that work professionally. So as it turns out, my prognosis was exceptional. I had a very rare form of ovarian cancer that had not metastasized. None of the 18 lymph nodes that they took had cancer. So in that regard, it was a quick cancer battle. What has happened, though, is challenges have lingered from that time, from the major abdominal surgery I had, and maybe some of you have heard of this, extensive sticky scar tissue and clips in my abdomen, and it sometimes can wreak tremendous havoc on me that lands me in the hospital fighting for my life. But not for a few years, and until a few years after I had cancer did that challenge begin. So I thought I had gotten off the hook. I was thrown into instant menopause. I don't recommend that, but I made it through, and I continued on, enjoying my time with my kids, but also keeping those other irons in the fires, writing more and more, but then thinking, okay, pragmatism, I've been doing the passion thing, pragmatism. And I decided to go back to accounting. Very pragmatic choice. I went back out of passion. I chose to work for a nonprofit organization that had 26 active programs, including refugee resettlement, immigration, helping the homeless, helping families, numerous areas, disaster relief, and it's Catholic Charities in Oklahoma City. I loved my time working there. Very pragmatic in terms of the accounting, but the passion, being able to walk out to the lobby and look down into the parking lot and seeing women who had come in from conflict regions in Africa and were seeking refuge, and to know that I was part of supporting them in getting that refuge by doing the work that I was doing very much behind the scenes. So the passion was all there. The pragmatism, I thought, can I really do this? Can I, for the rest of my professional life, sit behind the scenes at a desk, crunching numbers with minimal social engagement. And ultimately the answer became, no, I can't do that. I don't want to be behind the scenes recording what's happened. I want to be on the front scenes making things happen. So at that time, and it still remains the case, there was a great need for educators in Oklahoma. I had taken an active part in collaboratively educating my kids for a time in homeschool, but mostly in public schools, and really working collaboratively with teachers to make sure my kids were educated. And I wanted to be part of planting those seeds of enthusiasm for learning with kids in Oklahoma. So I went all in. I did everything I needed to certify. And I was so naive. I went in and I taught at a very challenging school. A lot of issues, had a particularly challenging class of 6th graders who I loved, but they wore me out. Many aspects of teaching were tremendously rewarding, but also enormously depleting, with all of the requirements and things that we had to do outside of the classroom to be ready to teach, and all of the criteria that we had to meet. So I loved the work, but I found it exhausting. And so I began to think about, okay, how do we avoid burnout as women, as educators, as women? So I began to research that online. And this is where I'm driving to the part where I actually went into health and wellness coaching. So I began to research, how do we replenish ourselves? How do we avoid burnout? And as I researched, I ran into a program at Mayo Clinic that was focused on supporting people and making the most of their health and well-being. So the Wellness Coach Training Program. The more I looked at that program, the more I thought, this is the work I would have done if it had been available in college. This is the work that I was born to do, to socially engage with others, to support them in their health and well-being. Something I believe in deeply, and I've experienced good times with health and challenging times. And regardless of if you're in the good times or the challenging times, taking care of yourself is supremely important. And so I went all in. My husband, as always, was tremendously supportive. Sure, go to Mayo Clinic and train to be a health and wellness coach. You've got this. But my friends and close family were like, what are you doing? This is out of left field. And yet when I went and took the training and learned the things that they teach there about helping people to go from where they are to where they want to be with their health and well-being, I knew I had come home to the profession I had been prepared for and looking for all my life but hadn't done. So I did the training, and then I began to work with people, friends at first, and then word got out individually. And over time, it's morphed. I began to speak and work with organizations, doing keynote speeches, doing breakout sessions, doing wellness days. And I'll be honest with you, it is a midlife career revolution, and I am building the plane while I'm flying it, and I'm not sure exactly where it's going, but I'm loving the work. Just very briefly, a couple of things that I've done recently that have meant a great deal to me is I did a wellness day keynote for a multidisciplinary team that supports and rescues and helps children who have been abused to be healed. So the whole multidisciplinary team that wraps around them, from law enforcement to attorneys to medical care and mental health professionals, that was incredibly meaningful for me for a lot of reasons. And I recently finished a program with Palomar, Oklahoma City's Family Justice Center, who provides support for women, men, and children who have been through domestic abuse. I just spent 6 weeks doing a weekly program with women who are survivors of domestic abuse. And we focused in a safe place that was a refuge for them on optimizing and replenishing their health and well-being for going forward. So that was a
Fantastic.
huge nutshell I just shared. So thank you for letting me share all of that.
Yeah, no, thank you very much. Thank you very much. And I think we heard about your passion for helping women as a part of what you just said. So I'd like to move on to the health struggles that you faced.
Sure.
What were the most important learnings you had through that process that you could share with us?
Yeah, sure. So as I've shared, I've definitely been through some health challenges, as have, I'm sure, many who are in this audience today. Mm-hmm. It's not easy. It's tough. There's no sugarcoating it, but there are some amazing lessons learned. And I will tell you some of the primary things that I've learned when navigating health challenges. First of all, there's never a more important time for exercising self-compassion with ourselves. And I don't mean little s self-compassion. I mean capital S, serious self-compassion. When we're navigating difficult times, whether it's health, whether it's other struggles in our lives, exercising self-compassion in the ways that we talk to ourselves, in the ways we treat ourselves, and the expectations that we have on ourselves. Let me give you one small example. So I've been through massive abdominal surgery twice, and last time I had some pretty significant post-surgical complications. My abdomen is not something I would probably ever wear a bikini with. I've never really worn bikinis, but I would not. And you sort of look at that like, you know, I don't really feel good about my belly. It just is what it is. And then we live in a society where women are so pressured, even at various ages, to look a certain way, that I don't feel so good initially about my belly. Self-compassion. This is going to sound silly, and I'm making myself vulnerable here, but I will put my hands around my belly and I will just say, I love you, belly. I'm here. I love you, belly. We got through this and we're on our way. So self-compassion with a capital S. Another thing is really when we're going through struggles, just focusing on what you can do. Our minds are busy at work on the things that we cannot do, but what can we do? And putting our energy there. If you've had, maybe you're a runner and a significant injury, what can you do? Is it swimming? Is it walking? Is it meditation? Because you can't do anything else and you need an outlet for the stress. What can you do? And then it's important to pace ourselves. I don't know about you. I think most women entrepreneurs are full throttle. Let's do this. And then you're knocked down, you're holding on. It's really important that we pace ourselves. I'd like to say I've always known that and done well at it, but I've learned some tough lessons that we can't just go right back in. A couple of other things real quick is recognizing those milestones when we're coming back from health struggles, when we're navigating them. Let me give you another small example. So when I came out of the hospital last fall from a sudden medical emergency that I survived, and I'm so glad to be here. I had been a runner. I had been very active when I came out of the hospital after several weeks. Getting across my family room with a walker was a lot. So I wasn't going to be running anytime soon, and my husband had to help me. But I slowly fought my way back, pacing myself, and recognized those milestones. I'm outside. I'm sitting in a rocking chair. I'm walking down the street. I'm walking down the street without a walker. I made it to the greenbelt, and this is over weeks. I'm on the greenbelt. I can see the trees. I can hear the birds. Just recognizing those milestones and celebrating them. And finally, and this is a big one, when we're navigating difficult times, it's really important with all the tough stuff that's going on to be mindful to the extent possible of weaving in some joy and weaving in some fun, whatever that looks like for you in whatever way you can.
Wow. It's interesting. What you just said reminded me of a book that I read years ago called How to Stop Worrying and Start Living. And one of the things that Dale Carnegie recommends is, like, particularly I would imagine with an illness, picture the worst that could happen and then how you can make it better from there. And the minute you start coming up with actions you can take, you feel better.
That's what I love about this group. That's so powerful. And I'm going to take that with me today. That is very helpful. Thank you.
Oh gosh, yes, of course. Okay, so I'm interested in the program at Mayo. What did you learn to do through Mayo?
Yeah. So many things. I could write a book on it. Other people have. But in terms of distilling it down and thinking about what I learned at Mayo Clinic, I really didn't fully know what I was getting into when I went there. I thought health and wellness, I'm all in. I had some sense of it. But here's what I learned. I learned how to collaborate with and engage with individuals and groups to really help them take charge of their health and well-being and to navigate forward in very tangible ways. I work collaboratively with people, whether it's individuals or group. I do not come in directively. I learned to meet people where they're at and find out what's really important to them, and then to help them create a vision for where they want to be, to connect those dots between where they are and where they want to be, to create a plan, and a plan that's fluid from getting from A to B, that really taps into those SMART goals, that taps into the mindset of it doesn't have to be perfect to get where you want to go. We're going to have some lessons. It's going to be trial and learn, and then kind of weekly check-ins with me, and I encourage them to do it with themselves, of what did I do well this week and working on my plan, and what didn't go so well, and what can I do going forward that will really help me to make progress. And I can tell you, one of the big learnings for me is it really doesn't have to be perfect going from point A to point Z. Because when we're seeking perfection, people fall off, they feel like failures. No, take those mishaps, take those setbacks as an opportunity to learn and to sort of design a better plan going forward. I also learned really how to help people tap into that motivation and to have confidence for making change. And this is all science-based. It's all research-supported and evidence-based. And I just want to say here, there's a lot going on in the world of health and wellness. And I think it's really important to consider who we work with, but also what avenues we pursue for our health and wellness, because there's so many things going out there. Look to trusted resources, whether it's Mayo Clinic, whether it's the Cleveland Clinic, or other known sources of good information and support for navigating health and wellness.
It's interesting. What's coming to my mind, we've got a doctor friend of my family who's listening. How do you work with doctors? Do you end up working with doctors and the patient?
Yes. So speaking about building that plane while flying it, this is a big area that the whole industry is moving into. And so when I say the whole industry, for me, I'm talking about national board certified health and wellness coaches. Mm-hmm. And I think it's important to set the stage. So national board certified health and wellness coaches, they have taken a really tough exam. They've demonstrated their credibility with the training they've taken. And the national board is the same. We have the same examining organization that examines physicians, administers our exams to prove that we really are science-based, evidence-based, and have some credibility. So this is a super exciting area. The national board is really leading the work in partnering wellness coaches like me with medical practices. And so last I knew, where things are at with that is the work that I do in the next 2 to 3 years should be reimbursable medically by insurance companies. So I think more and more physicians are going to be bringing people like me into their practices. Physicians only have so much time, right? I've got 15 minutes. They've got a lot of pressure to see a lot of clients. As a wellness coach, I would have more time than that, whatever it looks like in a particular practice. So it's going to be medically reimbursable in the next few years. The national board is driving this. And I think what we're going to see is that healthcare industry filling out with the physicians who have true expertise in what people need to be doing, and then allied health professionals like me who can sit down with them and help them actually walk the talk and make a change. And if we really go in big on this in the US, I think it's going to make a difference in healthcare. I think we're going to see the diabetes numbers come down. I think we're going to see cardiac issues decrease. I think we're going to see strokes decrease. All of it if we go in big. And that's the push. And I hope that we do, because it will make a difference. Because right now, as I understand it, most of every dollar, 70 to 80 cents of every dollar spent on healthcare in the United States is spent on conditions and diseases rooted in potentially preventable conditions and diseases. So if people ate better, if they exercised more, those things go down, and we'll have healthier individuals, healthier families, communities, and nation.
Love it, love it, love it. And by the way, you guys, you can add to the chat if you want to ask questions as we go, and then we'll open it up in just a bit. Okay, so how do we as women in particular get in our own way as we navigate the healthcare journey?
Yeah, so let's be honest, women have a lot on their plates, a lot of balls in the air, and it's really been exacerbated by the pandemic. So when I talk about us getting on our own way as women, we're busy, it's full throttle. It's not that we desire to neglect our health and well-being. We want to do it, but we do let things get in the way. We pay lip service to, okay, I'm going to take better care of myself. But then we've got this whole list of all these things that we're doing. And as much as we want to do the health and wellness, it falls to the bottom. So we give lip service to prioritizing, but we don't really prioritize it, and we don't fully give ourselves permission to take care of ourselves. So that's one of the biggest challenges. And I think the place where we can start to turn that is where if we pull back and say, okay, where is this getting me? Like neglecting myself and not prioritizing myself. Where is this getting me for how I'm feeling? Oh, I'm tired. I'm lacking in energy. I'm putting on weight. It's not getting me where I want to go. I'm fatigued during the day. And then just beginning to think about what would be the benefits of really carving out some time this day, this week, to get moving. The benefits are tremendous. How different could your life be by the end of this year if you went all in on just getting exercise and taking better care of yourself in that way? So not trying to do everything, but one thing. I can promise you that if you made a commitment and worked with a medical professional to make a plan to go forward and really go in big this year on exercise, it's going to have a ripple effect. You sleep better, you eat better because you are energizing yourself with the exercise, so it makes a big difference. The other thing that I want to say in terms of sort of stemming the tide of women not taking care of themselves, and I've sort of already alluded to this, is it doesn't have to be all or nothing. We think, I got to do it all. If I'm going to take care of myself, it's going to be this big makeover. No, you don't have to do it all, because that's a recipe for starting on everything and ending on nothing, right? So just again, picking that area. And if you don't have time for that 30-minute walk, what can you do today? And let me be clear, when it comes to being physically active, it's not just what's the goal down the road, what's this going to give me, then what's it going to give me now? I'll tell you what, if we all got off today and just put on our favorite energizing music, some pop music, Justin Timberlake or whatever it is, spent 5 minutes and danced, I can tell you it would have a positive impact, mind, body, spirit for the rest of the day. And just weaving in little times like that throughout the day, standing up, stretching, taking a walk down the street or around the office, it makes a tremendous difference in how we feel. And research supports that it truly makes a difference in how well we are.
That's awesome. That is awesome. Good reminder. Okay. So women are handling so much with COVID, children being out of school, caring for themselves, caring for their families. And with entrepreneurs, you've got the added stress of running a business on top of it. Many have reached a breaking point. Do you find that this is the case? And how do you recommend that women handle these combined stressors?
Yeah, so I think it's really important to hit the pause button here and just say, yeah, it's tough, and acknowledge that. A lot of balls in the air and under pandemic circumstances and a lot of other things going on in the world. So just allowing ourselves to recognize this is a lot. I'm struggling to do it all. There's some relief in that. And there's just, okay, I'm going to give myself a break. Now, one of the things that I believe in, very important in the work that I do, is not having cookie cutter solutions. Like, okay, Donna, this is for you, it fits for Nan, this is for everybody, go do these things. I'm not directive. I really respect where you're at and meet you there. So I'm going to make a few suggestions just to think about as you keep all these different balls in the air during pandemic times. The first is I really want to invite you to become your own best wellness ally as never before. Be on your team. When I used to teach sixth graders, and sometimes some of them would not do their homework and they wouldn't do the reading or whatever it was, I would look at them and I would say to so-and-so, hey, I'm on your team. Be on your team. And it's the same with us as women. You know, if we don't take care of ourselves, probably nobody else is going to. We're taking care of a lot of people, right? But we have to really elevate the importance of this, be our own ally. And what can that look like? A couple of things. Well, a lot of things, but just right now, for the sake of discussion, it can look like a couple of really powerful things. So being your own ally can look like having maybe a weekly check-in with yourself or a wellness partner, whoever that is for you, and just say, okay, here's what's going on the next week. And then just look at it and be a ruthless ally at this point. What is everything I can get off my plate and purge in whatever way possible? What really wasn't as important as it seemed a few days ago? What can I delegate at work? What can I ask for help on? And go all in, being on your team with the really focused goal of purging as much as you can. There's only so many hours in the day. Another thing that I want to add to that is self-care first. And by that, I mean figure out what is truly non-negotiable for you with your health and wellness this week and generally. You can't do everything. There's not time, but what's non-negotiable for you? So I want to give those who are with us and those who may be listening later time to think about, when you think about your health and well-being, what do you want to have as non-negotiable this week and going forward? And I'm just even going to pause there for a moment, and then I want to share just my personal thoughts on this. So it looks different for everyone. For me, I'll be very clear with you throughout my life. My non-negotiable, which has been a little bit negotiated at times because I'm not perfect, is physical activity, exercise, and movement. Mind, body, spirit. When I'm having a tough day, if I'll take 20 minutes to go walk down the Greenbelt and back, maybe not listening to anything except the birds and the creek, I come back a different person. I have never taken a walk and not come back feeling better. For me, that non-negotiable is really physical activity, whatever it looks like. It makes a tremendous difference on any given day. So one last thing that I want to add, and that is maybe even consider the possibility of having a daily self-care check-in, or maybe even a few times during the day. Set your smartphone alarm and just check in with yourself. I had a client that I worked with in her 40s, dynamic, full throttle professional who had her irons in a lot of fires professionally and personally, is working in very stressful circumstances. And she said, you know, I'd go to work first thing in the morning and I'd be feeling okay. Like, I've got this, everything's okay. And she said, by mid-afternoon, I was maximally stressed with no idea when I crossed that threshold, when I reached sort of that breaking point. So we worked together to design some self-care check-ins for her throughout the day. She would set her smartphone alarm and just check in. And whatever was going on, she would just pause, catch her breath, take 60 to 90 seconds to just breathe, slow down. And that tells our bodies, it's okay, you've got this, just that stopping and breathing. And then pausing and asking herself a couple of questions. What am I needing right now? And is there something I can do for myself, or something I can ask of someone else to meet that need? And maybe it's as simple as, I really should stop and get a drink of water. I have not had any water this morning. Maybe it's, oh, it's 2 o'clock and I have not eaten lunch. Or maybe it's, I need to push away from the desk and go take a walk. Or maybe it's, I need to pause here and make a personal call because so-and-so has been on my mind. I'm concerned, it's stressing me out. I want to check in to see how they're doing. So self-care check-ins weekly, be your own ally, and then self-care check-ins on a daily basis. Just a few things to consider.
I love that. I love that. That's amazing. All right. I want to ask you, and I don't want to go down a negative path, but there's a lot of stress in the world right now, and the political dynamics and polarization in our world, and families are going after each other about this stuff. You talked about creating pockets of peace. Can you share how you do that?
Yes, it's deeply personal for each person, but let's be honest, as I have engaged with people personally and professionally over the last couple of years, we're feeling the turbulence of the world. We're feeling the turmoil. The news cycle is adding to it. The social media 24/7 is adding to it. The polarizing voices are. So no, we don't want to go down a negative path, but we want to acknowledge that. And the weight on our psyches has been enormous. And guys, here's the one negative thing I'll say, I don't think it's going away. We're ramping up for a next presidential election cycle. There's a lot of things going on politically that are pretty tough right now. So with that said, not giving directive answers, but really sitting with you right now, I want to ask you a couple of questions. So when you think about creating pockets of peace in your day-to-day life, a simple question is this: what brings you peace? What brings you peace? And this is why I love the work that I do, because it's individual. What brings you peace? And how can you get more of that in your life? So different answers, I'm sure, if we had time to really engage fully interactively. But for some, it may be that faith or that spiritual practice. And how can you get more of that in your life? Maybe something that brings you peace is certain people that you engage with and love having in your life. Maybe more time with them could bring you peace. Here's another thought. Maybe bookending your days, beginning your days in a place of peace, doing something that feels peaceful in the morning, whatever that is, reading an uplifting passage from a book, meditating first thing in the morning, putting music on that sets the tone for your day. And then the turbulence happens, right? The news happens, and then you come to the end of the day, turning the smartphone off and winding down with things that bring you peace. And this is my experience, this is my feeling. When we bookend our days with peace, tough stuff's going to happen, but overall we're going to have more pockets of peace. And then the other question I have for you just briefly in this area is, what are the things that take away from your peace, that rob you of peace? And how can you reduce or eliminate those things in your lives? Maybe it's people who want to talk about politics all the time and you love them, and maybe they're even in your family, but man, it's taken away from your peace. What can you do to reduce those conversations and have the focus maybe be on the things that you really do have in common? So what brings you peace? How can you have more in your life? And then what takes from your peace? And how can you reduce or eliminate those things from your life? Simple questions, but things to think about. And oftentimes it's the questions that we contemplate that really help us to design our futures going forward.
Very, very good. All right, you guys, I'm going to have you take your, put your cameras back on and turn on your mics. I wanted to ask you a question while they're doing that. So what's the best way to stay on track with your health goals?
Yes.
Any thoughts about that?
Yes, no, lots and lots of thoughts, but distilling it down and thinking about things that we can share in this time. So the things that can really help us to stay on track, they are multiple. And again, personal solutions for what works best for you. So staying on track. I think one of the most important things is, again, not trying to do everything all the time, but picking the area you want to go in on and thinking about the small changes that you can make. Instead of going big, go small for transformative change. Along with that, just this mindset of, I don't have to do this perfectly. I really can learn along the way. Things that didn't go so well, I can learn from. How can I make changes going forward? Also, I think having an accountability partner can be really helpful for staying on track, someone that you check in on. And maybe even experiment with that. Maybe there's another person who's an entrepreneur like you who really wants to go in big on eating healthier. And so you decide to do it together, and you've got that weekly conversation. Maybe you've got those text conversations where you can check in with each other. And one other idea that I want to share is really celebrating the successes that you have, big or small. Celebrating those successes. And BJ Fogg, he is the founder of the Behavior Design Center or something like that at Stanford University. He's also the author of Tiny Habits. His book is phenomenal. Atomic Habits is a good book on creating habits, but for me, who's a total geek about habit formation, Tiny Habits is excellent. And so he talks about celebrating our successes, big or small, and he's got like 100, 150 little celebrations that you can do. And it feels really geeky, like, oh, high five, I just went for a walk, I did it. But there's something psychologically that it positively reinforces what we're doing. So those are just a few of my thoughts. Having an accountability partner, going small to go big, recognizing it doesn't have to be perfect to make progress, and recognizing and celebrating your milestones.
No, I love that. I love that. All right, you guys get ready to ask your questions here. I was also thinking that you need to forgive yourself when you fall off the horse. You know
yes.
what I mean? Get back
yes. Yeah, so that's self-compassion for sure, not just when things are difficult, but when maybe you had a plan and didn't work according to plans, just say, but look at all the successes I've had. You know, I wanted to get out for 5 days and walk this week. I didn't, but I got out for 3. What helped me to do that? How did I get out there? And how can I have more of that in the week to come? Sure.
Very, very good. All right, you guys, I want to open it up to questions or thoughts that you'd like to share. And Adrian, I know you're here. He's a doctor too. So at least he was here a second ago. Yeah, there we go.
Awesome. Fantastic to have a doctor here. I'm glad he's here.
I'll just share sort of a half question, half observation, I guess. Because, you know, I don't know if you're familiar with Vicki Robin's book, Your Money or Your Life. And it talks about how way back in the day when we were hunters and gatherers, we only worked 3-4 hours a day, and the rest of the time was for celebration and rituals and all these types of things. And then somehow along the way, we got it into our heads that we have to work 40 hours a week, or we have to work, and sort of alludes to the depression and how people sort of associate leisure with being poor or unemployed. If you have leisure time, you must be unemployed, right? So how do we start to sort of get these these ingrained ideas out of our heads? And because there are people, just in the back of their minds, it just feels so uncomfortable to try and relax.
Yes, no, I think that is a really key point. I think we live in a country, in the United States in particular, that work ethic is everything, and that's the identity. And we have a hard time relaxing. So a couple of thoughts on this. One, more conversations, and they're having them in HR and leadership in corporations, that this is not an optional thing, supporting our people's well-being. This is necessary. We've seen the big resignation in response to workplaces that aren't supporting well-being, and people recognizing as never before that, I can't work and be miserable. I have to work and be well. And so I do think a couple of thoughts here. On the macro level, I think our nation, and probably the world, but I'm more familiar with what's going on in the United States, are looking at this at the macro level. Whoa, our people are leaving. They're making an exodus. They're going where they can feel better, whether it's working for themselves, whether it's working for places that are more work friendly. So I think people are in sync with you, Case. Like, what we're doing in our nation's not working, and people are voting with where they're working, right? So in terms of getting on the micro level, getting comfortable with relaxation, like personally, right? Like taking some time away from work and stuff. It's tough because we have this mindset of work, 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 and yet what's the price of work, work, work? And what are the benefits of having that relaxation time? I'll tell you, with the best of them, when I have a lot on my plate work-wise, I can go all in and like work long hours. And there's a detriment, right? And I have to coach myself sometimes and say, pause button, let's go do something just for fun. And this is going to probably sound silly, but I will even just go watch Masterclass, that website I'm subscribed to, and watch Anna Wintour talk about fashion, which I know nothing about, and just her enthusiasm and everything. I'm replenished by that. So we can be replenished while consuming, and that is something that replenishes me. But I think just getting a taste of, okay, what I've been doing is not working for me. I'm exhausted. I'm burned out. What's the price? And what do I want more of? And what I find is when we take that time to replenish ourselves, we come back to our work with fresh ideas, with fresh enthusiasm, and more energy to do the work. So a big question you've asked that I'm exploring myself on that macro level and on the micro level, and an important one to ask. So thank you.
Very good. Yes, good, good, good. Okay, other questions or comments, guys?
I have a question for you. So in my career, I started working in healthcare in the early 80s and stayed in healthcare for probably about 30 years. And what I have seen, and I think first though, Debra, I want to say thank you for this important work that you're doing, because I agree, health and wellness is pivotal to having good health outcomes. But I've also seen what challenges, social challenges can cause bad health outcomes as well. So my question for you is, are you finding partners in the Oklahoma City community that are helping the people you're helping when those social issues come up?
Yes, absolutely yes. Talking about passion, that's a deep passion for mine. Like supporting all people and making it equitable and access to support for health and well-being. And let me tell you, it's a big conversation going on in Oklahoma right now. And I have been engaging with leadership and organizations just to say, okay, let's talk about this. And they've been thinking about it for a while and don't have perfect solutions. There is a lot going on in the state that I live in Oklahoma, to support well-being for everyone. But I gather, and I'm speaking as one person, right? I gather what they're finding is people who are already interested in health and wellness are taking advantage of that. How do we get people in the door, whether it's the libraries, whether it's nonprofit organizations? How do we get the people in the door who really need this support to have healthier outcomes, but they aren't coming in? So I will be honest with you, I'm in the very early stages, but very active stages of engaging in these conversations. Big questions to tackle, because ultimately, you know, if people are going to be well, they need support for being well, right? And physicians, as wonderful as they are, and they have saved my life literally more than once, it's not the whole answer. There needs to be support wrapped around the medical practices to support. So that's one of the places that I think people can ultimately get help if we evolve in the direction I think we're going. But organizations, governmental, nonprofit are really engaging in these questions. How do we not just talk about health and wellness? How do we support our whole population in improving their health and wellness? And a lot going on. That is a really important topic. Thank you for asking.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, Adrian, I was going to ask you to pipe in here if you're available. Our doctor on the call that I can see. Okay, all right, maybe not. All right, go ahead.
Yep. Hi, Adrian Villarreal.
Hello.
I want to thank you very much for your work, Deborah. I think that a comment that I had shared earlier in the chat is that there is a distinct difference between cure and heal. Mm. And there's lived experience with this, but there's actual research and data that shows that we have to heal the entire person. We have to be mindful of, you know, how do we restore the entire individual, mind, body, and spirit. Mm-hmm. And it's you can't shortchange this. So we live in the digital age, and we have a lot of, you know, neat tools and, you know, devices at our disposal that we sometimes confuse for ourselves. So, but we are not computers, we're not cell phones, we are not the internet. So, and it's a mistake to confuse, you know, what we can do with who we are, in terms of, you know, yes, we can, you know, access all of this neat stuff, but, you know, cell phones don't have to sleep. So, you know, you don't need a computer to be outside and in green space or in nature for it to function properly 24/7, 365. So, yeah. And so we're still Mark I humans, as we would say in the military. So, yes. So it's, yeah, health and wellness are inextricably linked, and we've gotten away from that. We're coming back to it, but we've definitely gotten away from that.
Okay. Thank you so much for being here. I'm glad you commented. Thank you, Adrian.
Can I just provide some feedback with what Adrian shared? First of all, thank you for being here, Adrian. I'm really excited about the growing alliance between physicians and then people like the work that I do. So I just want to affirm I'm in complete sync with what you did. There's the cure, what you said, the cure, but there's also the healing. And I know this personally, and I know this professionally, and I know that you have to support the whole person for healing. And I know for myself, some of the things that I've been through and the fear that I could have another medical emergency. I've sought the help that I need to be supported mind, body, and spirit, and to heal. And it doesn't happen overnight. I want to acknowledge that. The other thing that I want to acknowledge that we really haven't talked about is the place that tech plays in our lives. In terms of supporting health and wellness, it can be beneficial, but it can also maybe help us, keep us from really engaging with human beings who can truly tailor to our needs in health and well-being. Also, I think we have to be really conscious, and I'm personally still trying to find what works for me, is what is my relationship with technology? What do I want it to look like? How can it support my life without consuming and overwhelming my life? And I will share one resource, a fantastic book by Cal Newport, who is a professor at Georgetown University. It's called Digital Minimalism. fantastic book published, I think, in 2019. And he is not anti-tech, but he is very pro taking time to be conscious and think about how we're going to engage with technology in a way that enriches our lives instead of depleting our lives. And I'll be honest with you, I need to go reread that book and sort of sync up back with that again. So because tech is pervasive, and the people who create the tech, they are paid a lot of money to keep us hooked. And so it's something we have to be truly conscious about doing. Quality of life issue.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Okay, we are almost out of time. So as much as I hate to do it, we're gonna have to wrap it up here. So at the end of the day, what would you most like people to have learned from you today, Debra?
Yeah, so I think just how important it is to elevate the importance of your health and well-being. If you don't take care of yourself, nobody's going to do it for you. Be on your own team. Be an ally for yourself. Line up the support that you need outside yourself. There's fantastic books to read. There's great support to get out there. If you want support with a health and wellness coach, I recommend going to the National Board of Health and Wellness Coaching at NBC-HWC.org. So that's NBHWC.org to look for who might be a match for you. And I think just go small to go big. Just imagine if you wanted to make over the way you eat, instead of trying to do everything at once, think about maybe working your way around the food groups in the plate. The next month, going in big on vegetables and increasing that appearance on your plate more often. And then a few weeks later, maybe working on fruits. And then by the end of the year, what difference could that make for you? So go small to have transformative results. Those are the big things that I would say. So yes.
I love it. I love it. All right. Is there anything else you want to add? And by the way, if people want to contact you, would you please put your information in the chat?
Yes.
But is there any final comments on your part? Go ahead.
Yeah, so just the last thing I want to say is last fall, when I was in the hospital fighting for my life, my husband was a tremendous advocate for me. It was complications related to the abdominal surgery I had years ago. I had a sudden medical emergency. I was in the hospital for several weeks in very dire situation. A weekend, things went from bad to worse, and they told me, you need surgery now. They gave me about 15 minutes notice to push me down to the OR. I was scared, I was sick, I was weak, I was tired, and just a couple of weeks before I had been perfectly fine. And as they were pushing me down on the gurney, my husband was walking beside me. Before they took me into the OR, he took pictures of our hands together with our wedding bands. And as they were pushing me down, he was walking beside me, and we didn't know how things were going to turn out. I just told him, I said, tell everyone I love them. If I don't make it, you tell everyone I love them. I'm better now. And I get caught up in the day-to-day life, but I look back at that time, and here's what I want to end on. Let the small stuff in our lives that clutter our lives and are annoying or weigh on us, let it fall away as much as possible. Let it become small, tiny, unimportant. And the things that are important, the things that are matter, and your health and well-being is part of it, let those become the big things in life. Take care of yourself. You matter, and your health and well-being matters. That's how I want to end.
Wonderful. Boy, that was wonderful. You're so right. Okay. All right. I hate to close it up, but we are just about out of time. So I want to remind everybody that our show next week, we've got Bryce James with Audifies and Larynx coming, and he's going to be talking about self-publishing ebooks. And I think it's really going to be a very good program. On July 15th, I'm hoping to have someone come talk to us about marketing analytics and how to use that to grow your business. And then, of course, on July 22nd, we've got our next networking session. Want to remind everybody, we've got a new program to help people go from being marginalized or underrepresented into high-paying technology careers. We're partnering with large companies to make this happen. If you've got a company that'd be interested in learning more, please let me know. And then, let's see here, please like and share our social media pages. Please join us next Friday at 10 Central. Any final comments from you, Debra, or anyone else?
Just thank you, everyone, for being here, for engaging and bringing your hearts. I hope that you gained something valuable that you can take with you to make a difference in your health and well-being this week. It's been just a joy and a privilege. Thank you, Donna, for having me.
Of course. I think this was awesome. All right. Anybody else?
Thank you, Debra. It was awesome.
Thank you, Kate.
All right, you guys. Thank you for being here. Hope to see you next Friday. And please remember, purse power, we have it. Let's use it. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.